Hey there, old school gamers. Here we are at the Grumpy Old GMs channel, where we help you bring out your inner greatest DM or GM. Today we're going to do a third installment on what I didn't really intend to be a series, but I guess it is a series, on player advice for players. And this will help you DMs and GMs too, because these are things to kind of point out to your players, or maybe to help your players with sometimes. A few videos back, the first one we did in this series was about searching the room, so definitely check that out. And a couple videos back, we did one on clerics don't forget to turn undead. So today, we're going to talk about something that I've just really kind of noticed lately, because I DM or GM just about every day because I'm a full-time professional GM. And if you'd like to see if there's any rooms at my tables, any open seats, you can come to grumpyoldgms.com, follow some links there. I'm going to be updating that website today because sometimes our tables move around. And sometimes tables, sadly come to an end. And then sometimes we excitingly launch new tables and stuff. So if you'd like to see if there's room at one of our tables, come to grumpyoldgms.com or find the Discord link below and just hang out with us on Discord. Whether you are a member of one of our tables or not, we have a huge community of people who are not. Like, they just hang out with us and talk gaming and stuff like that. So definitely, you do not need to be a member of one of our tables to plug into our community. You do not need to pay for a game to be a member of our community. Our community membership is totally free. And so, yeah, just hang out with us. So, but today's advice is basically about, if you're going to rest, secure the room. Because tabletop RPGs, as I've said a lot, are not video games. Now, some people have kind of come back at me a little bit and they prefer the video game style. That's okay. But I'd like to think that most of us in tabletop RPGs don't necessarily, if you're going to play a video game, go play a video game. But that's just my opinion. But since tabletop RPGs are supposed to simulate for us if D&D was real, if magic was real, if elves and unicorns and vampires and zombies and wizards and flying ships, and if all this stuff was real, to try to immerse ourselves there and live there in our imaginations with our friends as much as possible. So creatures in a dungeon, they do not just sit there in the room and wait for you to show up and kill them and take their stuff. From the early days of the game, what was done about this was called wandering monster tables. And this kind of simulated the fact that there would be some people and things, creatures and whatnot, moving around the dungeon. That the dungeon would not be a static place, it would be a dynamic place. So, if you're going to stop and rest in the dungeon, because the dungeon crawl can be kind of a long, lengthy experience, you might want to secure the area, because no matter what rule set you're using, even if you're using the completely broken 5e rule set where 8 hours of rest suddenly cures everything, but whatever rule set you're using, you're going to need that uninterrupted rest time in every rule set of some kind. So you got to secure the room. And traditionally, classically, this was done. This is why old school dungeoneering gear sets would have iron spikes and mallets and stuff. Now, of course, the wooden spikes are for vampires. We know that. But the iron spikes, not only were they for mountaineering or climbing walls or something, but they were also for spiking the door shut. Or just shoving stuff in front of the door, securing the door somehow to make sure that if you have to camp out in a dungeon, and you can't get to the surface or get to a safer camping ground or something to rest, that, you do something to be uninterrupted. So there was a group just last night. So as I record this, it's Saturday morning. We did some gaming last night, Friday night. There was a group last night that they were in a very elaborate laboratory, and they decided to take a rest. And they were beat down pretty hard. And they were using the Dungeons & Dragons 5e rule set, so they needed the 8 hours, everything was going to come back, but they had to have 8 uninterrupted hours. Well, this particular environment, dungeon, what have you, wasn't really a dungeon, but we'll generically call it a dungeon. This particular environment kind of knew that they were there. They were being searched for by guards and stuff. And so as the DM, I quickly came up with some odds that the guards would search that room sometime in the next 8 hours, and I decided the odds were probably pretty high. So I rolled, and some guards came by during the 7th hour of their 8-hour rest. And they had fortunately, because I had described just how much heavy equipment was in that laboratory and how much heavy furniture there was there and everything, that they shoved stuff in front of the door. And so, yeah, some guards came and opened up the door and started to, try to unblock the door. They started to try to shove stuff aside so that they could get to the party. And the party had a human war mage wizard, and he kind of walked as close as he could because it didn't seem like the guards had any missile weapons or any ranged attacks. It seemed like they just had, melee weapons. And so he kind of got as close as he could to the doorway that was still blocked by all this stuff, and carefully around the stuff into the hallway where the guards were, he cast Agonazer's Scorcher. And of course, because that was one of the spells he had left. I mean, yes, they needed to rest, but he wasn't completely empty of spells. And, of course, the guards left because, they were not going to, even though they were strong enough that they could have cleared the rubble or the stuff in front of the blockage in front of the door. It would have taken time, and they can't just be taking spell after spell after spell while they try to clear the door. That's not going to work. So they got the guards to leave, for the moment. And so that particular wizard's 8-hour rest was spoiled. There was still 1 hour left to get 8 hours because the guards came by during the 7th hour. So he got a short rest instead. Everybody else got a long rest though. And the party kind of, proceeded. They got out of there before the guards and whatnot of the environment could convene on that area. But so yeah, it was kind of it's important to secure the room, secure your environment, because it's not a video game. It's a tabletop role-playing game. So we're, simulating a living, breathing world, or sometimes a multiverse if you count plane travel and stuff. So it's just important to, I've had players who are maybe a little less experienced, or maybe just looking at a little different style of game. We've talked lately about different styles of games and different expectations of players, and they will try to rest, and they will rest without securing the room at all. And then they get upset when wandering monsters kind of come in while they're trying to take an 8-hour rest in the monster's environment. Like, if I came into your house and I didn't belong there, and I just want to take a nap in your bed, you are going to do something to try to kick me out. That's just how reality is. You're not just going to have some strange person come into your house and try to sleep there. So, yeah. So let's just remember to secure the room if we're going to rest. And on the topic of rest, I've talked long enough. We don't need to get into the brokenness of 5e Leomund's Tiny Hut. We can do that some other time. In the meantime, if you'd like to have personal coaching, either over the phone or through Discord calls, from me and my fellow grumpy old GMs for your game, your players, what you're trying to do, whether it's casual DMing or professional DMing for money, then we have a Patreon down below for you. In the meantime, I will see you around the gaming table.